Well, it is so nice to be back on the show circuit, and today we are at the Landlord Investment Show, moving to the amazing old Billingsgate Fish Market in London, and we've come along to PT partner stand Hammock, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Manoj and James. And guys, I'm sure you'll agree, it's so great to be back talking to people face to face again after, I think it's nearly 2 years now.
100%, yeah. It's really good to see people face to face as opposed to over Zoom. It's good to be at the show, really.
Yes, and it's great to see the turnout, isn't it? There's a real appetite for people to come out, and I think one of the amazing things about the shows is that they're all about solving problems.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a problem, there's probably going to be an answer to a problem here, isn't it?
Yeah, there really is. It's what's been really nice is that, you know, there's a lot of obviously meeting new people and telling them about Hammock, but we've also had quite a lot of existing customers who we've never met in person before actually coming up and telling us, you know, meeting us, you know, instead of just seeing us over Zoom, but telling us the impact it's had, how it's made their lives easier, how it saved them money, saved them time. So that's the bit I've actually loved the most actually of today.
Well, it's very rewarding to hear that, isn't it? Now, Manoj, just remind us, what exactly is Hammock?
So Hammock is a property finance platform. We've got 4 core pillars: banking, bookkeeping, tax insights, and property insights. So what we do is automate the whole bookkeeping process and the banking process, so we can give you a breakdown of your P&L by property or by portfolio. We can also forecast the taxes, and then also we calculate the property yields and capital growth, etc., and so on.
So why do you think landlords would benefit from a specialised current account?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways you can use Hammock. So yeah, you can open a current account with us, which means it's fully integrated. You know, if you're one of those landlords you're using your personal account and you've been thinking for ages, I should really, you know, not be using this with my property stuff as well, then obviously you can open a current account with us, fully integrated. We can then automatically track your rent and your expenses and give you the full breakdown that Manoj just mentioned. But you can also, if you don't want to open a current account with us, you can just connect your existing. So if you've already got an account that's set up for your properties, you just connect that over open banking and you get all the same features, all the same automation. So yeah, either way, it just saves you time, saves you money, and saves you stress.
Well, that's so important. I mean, landlords, I don't think they're particularly familiar with open banking.
Yeah.
Can you just explain exactly what it is?
Yeah, so open banking came about because of actually the government intervened with the traditional banks and literally asked them to start sharing their data to create competition in the market. So if you think about banking, most of us bank with one of the major high street banks. And so we've got new challenger banks coming in, but they can't really get traction, or people want to generate and build products which are useful for customers, and they can't do that because they don't have access to the banking data. So the government intervened together with the Competition Market Authority to actually tell the banks to do open banking, and that's where the open banking initiative came from. So banks are now have to provide APIs to allow companies like myself, Hammock, to connect and take a bank feed directly from the traditional banks.
And there are other applications for landlords as well, like tenant referencing and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So I think open banking has really changed the game in the property sector and other industries, in fact. So tenant referencing is a great example of like doing quick checks on the tenants, getting the tenant to connect their bank feed and actually figure out what their affordability criteria is, for example. We don't do tenant referencing, but there's some great products out there that do use open banking for that.
Fantastic. So James, one of the key things that has come out of COVID is obviously rent arrears. Landlords, they have to be on top of their rent collection, and that's a very important part of what Hammock can help with, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So what we saw ourselves actually, you know, as soon as COVID happened, we did see a spike in missed payments. Because we are automatically tracking them, we actually notify a landlord if a payment hasn't come in on time. Now, the great part about that is I think any landlord knows that the faster you act, the more likely you are to actually get that payment. If you let it fester too long, it starts getting close to next month's rent, and then suddenly you find yourself in a bit of a spiral. So yeah, so Hammock enables you to, I say, because we're tracking your expenses for you, that as soon as that payment is missed, we let you know, and so that you can act straight away. And then even, what we saw a lot, certainly last year, is somebody might fall into arrears, and then between the landlord and the tenant, they come to some kind of arrangement to start paying it back over a certain number of months, so maybe they overpay slightly. And Hammock can also track all of that for you as well, so you don't need to keep a record of it yourself. It's all in Hammock. It keeps track of exactly what you're owed and when, and that can even be shared with the tenant as well. So.
And I think all of that's really part of open banking as well, if you think about how much of an impact it's made. For Hammock, open banking has enabled our landlords to really automate the tracking for them and actually track the rent roll, for example, as well.
I'm kind of thinking along the lines of it's the digitization of the landlord life cycle. I think it's part of that, and I think this is the way that it's going. I think perhaps COVID's even sped it up a bit, which could be one of the positive things to come out of it. But landlords have these incredible tools at their fingertips now. I was in the Telegraph recently to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Buy to Let, because I've been a landlord since 1992, and when I started there just weren't these tools, and I think that chimes also with the professionalisation of the sector as well. Landlords are being forced to be more professional, and I think they've got to recognise these tools, how they can help them and be more efficient. And also it's almost like a risk mitigation tool as well, isn't it?
I 100% agree with you, and I think this show is an example of landlords coming searching for tools, and like you said, the life cycle can be digitised all the way through, and there's going to be someone in this hall today that can digitise part of that journey, right? So, and I think going back to your point about COVID, it really has sped up the transformation in all industries. So people are now open to technology, adopting technology a lot earlier. It's definitely sped up the adoption of tech, I'd say.
So James, I'm sure you've been asked some really interesting questions on the stand today, and again I think it's landlords coming here with pain points that they want solved. What sort of conversations have you been having?
Yeah, so I think a lot of landlords who come here, a lot of them actually, they've heard of us now, but they don't know exactly what we do, so they're always really intrigued. I think open banking, as we've already discussed, is something that, we've been coming to this show for a few years now, and when we first came here, nobody had heard of open banking. Now I definitely notice that it's maybe 50-50, but there's still a lot of people who are really interested, want to know how it works, and it's all about just educating that, open banking actually, all you're sharing is read-only information, so there's no access to your actual payments, but it's just a way that you can use the technology out there just to save yourself time, save yourself money, and I say, what's actually really nice is when you educate people of these new things, just how excited they get. They love seeing innovation, they love seeing new products. So yeah, it's been really fun actually.
Well, that was really nicely going to lead on to my next question. With any digital tool, you're always thinking ahead to the roadmap, you're always developing, you're always getting feedback from your clients and so on, aren't you? And I'm sure that, when we last talked to you, which must be 18 months, 2 years ago, Hammock's moved on since then, and there's always something new to discover and a new tool in the toolbox, isn't there?
But as you know, technology is always evolving, and the need for technology always gets greater each year as things change in regulation as well. So a good example of that is MTD. So with HMRC changing and enforcing the regulation of MTD, it means landlords like yourself and me have to file our taxes 5 times a year, not once a year, right? So we're now adopting our technology to give forecasts quarterly and do the 5th one instead of just doing it once a year. So it's all about responding to change, whether it's external or internal from customers. And I think that the companies who adapt and adopt quickly will be the ones who actually help champion this digital transformation actually.
Well, I have to say, Manoj, I am absolutely dreading MTD. I have to say, it has been put back another year, hasn't it? But I think, it is the way it's going, and landlords do need to face up that time is going to go actually very quickly, and it's going to be on us before we know it. And the sooner that they can get, into it, the better, really.
Yeah, 100%. It's I think everybody can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief that it's been delayed a year, but I think that really shouldn't stop you getting yourself ready, because actually I think what people will find is that they think they're making this change because they're being forced to, but actually when they make it, they'll realise it benefits them in so many other ways. So in one hand, they're getting ready for MTD, but on the other hand, actually I suddenly have a much better overview of my portfolio. I suddenly know exactly where I am with each tenant. I'm getting reminders about my gas certificate expiring, and so actually I think they'll find that whilst it helps them relieve the stress of MTD, I think actually, but just by adopting technology, you just find you relieve stress in all parts of your life, and every landlord has a part that they hate doing, and I promise you there is a tool out there to help you with that part. So I think it's all about just finding what's out there, taking advantage of all the amazing stuff in this room, and making the most of your time. So you're not wasting time doing stuff you hate. Let the technology do that, and then do the stuff you actually like doing.
No, that's a very good point. I think just as we close this out now, Manoj, I think that COVID definitely exposed weak business models.
Yeah.
I think that obviously we've got concerns about bank rate rising, etc., more regulation, more legislation, etc. And I think landlords do have to understand their businesses a lot better.
Yeah.
It's not something where you can just have a little hobby on the side anymore. It has got much more business-like, hasn't it? And those that run weak business models, they're probably not going to survive, if we're honest, if they have indeed even survived COVID so far and all the lockdown and everything. So it's a very, very good time for landlords to actually think about taking these steps to become a digital landlord.
One thing COVID's taught us is anything can happen, and a lot of landlords were impacted by tenants not being able to work and not being able to pay their rent. So, and in terms of the regulation changes from HMRC and from the government in terms of Section 24 and various other changes coming up with EPC and stuff, the costs of being a landlord are just going to increase. And part of that is to also professionalise the industry as well from the government's point of view. And people need to get their books in check and start using technology to bring down some of those costs, and also not think of cost as just money, but also time.
Yes.
So most landlords do it part-time, and actually their time is valuable, right? So I think landlords need to have a change of mindset of thinking the cost as time and not just money as well. And that's where technology really helps.
Yeah, no, I like that change of mindset. It's so important. And as you say, most landlords do not, value their time. They don't put a value on it. And I think that's why, coming out to a show such as this today, meeting, suppliers like Hammock and the other exhibitors here is such an actual valuable investment of landlords' time as well. So thank you so much for joining me, both of you. And lovely to meet up with our friends and partners at Hammock here at the Landlord Investment Show. And if you'd like any more information about Hammock, please, they can drop questions on the thread, or do click on the banner at the top of the thread and jump across to the Hammock website, and you'll be able to find out more. But for now, guys, enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much.